The camera flash nearly blinded her. Amara stood on stage at the Global Finance Summit, her hand stretched out toward one of the richest men in the world. Richard Hale looked at her palm like she was offering him garbage. Then he pulled his hand back. He didn't say a word. He just smiled at the man next to her and shook his hand instead. Warm, friendly, like she wasn't even there. The room went quiet. 2,000 people watched. Nobody moved. Amara felt the heat rise to her face. But she didn't flinch. She lowered her hand slowly, kept her back straight, and walked off stage like nothing happened. But something did happen, and in less than 30 days, she would freeze $3 billion of his empire. This is that story. Let me tell you who Amara really was. At 29 years old, she worked as a senior compliance officer at the International Financial Protection Bureau. Her job? To catch rich people who thought they were above the law. She graduated top of her class at Harvard. She spoke 4 languages. She had helped shut down 3 major money laundering operations before she turned 27. But none of that mattered to people like Richard Hale. To him, she was just a young black woman who didn't belong in his world. Amara dealt with this every single day. The looks, the comments, the way people talked over her in meetings like her voice didn't matter. One time, a senior executive asked her to get him coffee. She was leading the meeting. Another time, someone asked if she was the diversity hire. She never snapped. She never yelled. She just did her job better than anyone else in the room. Her mother used to tell her, "Baby, let your work speak so loud they can't ignore you." And that's exactly what she did. Now, let me tell you about Richard Hale. He was 62 years old and worth $14 billion. He owned hotels, banks, tech companies, and half the real estate in 3 major cities. Magazines called him a genius. Business schools studied his strategies. Politicians begged for his donations. But behind the fancy suits and charity dinners, Richard Hale was something else entirely. He believed certain people belonged in certain places. And in his mind, a young black woman had no business standing next to him on any stage. He never said it out loud. He didn't have to. His actions said it for him. The handshake video spread like wildfire. Within hours, it had 10 million views. People were furious. Comments flooded in from everywhere. Did he really just do that? This man is disgusting. She handled it with so much grace. I would have lost it. Reporters called Richard's office for a statement. His team released 3 sentences. Mr. Hale meant no disrespect. It was a simple misunderstanding. He looks forward to continued collaboration with all industry partners. That was it. No apology, no explanation, just corporate nonsense. Richard thought it would blow over. These things always did. He was too rich, too powerful, too connected for anything to stick. He was wrong. 2 weeks after the summit, Amara sat in her office going through files. Her team had been assigned a new project, a global audit of major corporations suspected of hiding money overseas. The list had 47 companies on it, banks, investment firms, holding companies. And right there on page 12 was Hale Industries. Amara stared at the name for a long time. Her colleague Marcus walked in. "You see who's on the list?" "I saw." "You okay with this? After what happened?" She looked up at him. "This isn't personal, Marcus. It's work. If his company is clean, the audit will show that. If it's not..." She shrugged. "Then we do our job." Marcus nodded slowly. "All right, but you know people are going to say you're doing this for revenge. Let them say what they want. I know the truth, and so will the evidence." That was the thing about Amara. She didn't care about revenge. She cared about facts, numbers, documents, things you could prove. Feelings don't hold up in court. Evidence does. The audit started quietly. Amara's team began pulling financial records from Hale Industries, transaction histories, tax filings, investment portfolios, everything. At first, nothing looked wrong. The company was massive, but the paperwork seemed normal. Then Amara found something strange. A transfer of $40 million to a company in the Cayman Islands. The company had no employees, no office, no website, just a name on paper. She dug deeper. Another transfer, 60 million. Same type of company, different island. Then another, and another. Within 3 weeks, Amara had tracked over $400 million flowing to shell companies that existed only on paper. She called her team into the conference room. "Look at this," she said, pointing at the screen. "These aren't real businesses. They're empty boxes. Money goes in, then disappears into accounts we can't trace." Marcus whistled low. "That's textbook money laundering." "It gets worse," Amara said. "Some of these accounts connect to offshore banks that have been flagged for corruption. And look at the dates. These transfers happen right before major tax deadlines. Every single time." The room went silent. They weren't just looking at sloppy bookkeeping. They were looking at organized financial crime on a massive scale. And it all led back to Richard Hale. If you're enjoying this story, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Amara knew she had to be careful. Richard Hale wasn't some small-time crook. He had lawyers, connections, friends in high places. If she made one mistake, one error in her report, he would bury her. So she checked everything twice, then 3 times. Then she had her team check it again. Every number had to be perfect. Every claim had to have proof behind it. She worked 16-hour days. She barely slept. She ate lunch at her desk and dinner at her desk, and sometimes breakfast at her desk too. Her mother called her worried. "Baby, you sound exhausted." "I'm fine, Mama." "You're not fine. You're running yourself into the ground." "Is this about that man? The one from the video?" Amara paused. "It's about doing what's right. That's all." Her mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You've always been like this, even as a little girl. When something wasn't fair, you couldn't let it go until you fixed it. Is that a bad thing?" "No, baby. It's who you are. Just be careful. Men like him don't go down easy. And they don't go down clean." Amara promised she would be careful. But she also knew she couldn't stop. Not now. Not when she was this close. The evidence kept piling up. Hidden accounts in Switzerland. Fake invoices from companies that didn't exist. Payments to government officials that were labeled as consulting fees. Richard Hale hadn't just been bending the rules. He had been breaking them for years, maybe decades. And nobody had caught him because nobody had looked close enough. Until now. Richard Hale found out about the investigation on a Tuesday morning. His chief financial officer burst into his office looking pale as a ghost. "Sir, we have a problem." Richard didn't look up from his computer. "Handle it." "I can't handle this one. The IFPB is auditing us. They've been pulling our records for weeks." Now Richard looked up. "The IFPB? Why wasn't I told about this sooner? We didn't think it was serious. These audits happen all the time. But, sir," the CFO swallowed hard. "They're looking at the offshore accounts." The room went cold. Richard leaned back in his chair. His jaw tightened. "Who's leading the investigation?" The CFO checked his notes. "A woman named Amara Johnson." Richard's face changed. Recognition. Then anger. Then something darker. "Her," he said quietly. "The woman from the summit." "Sir, this is revenge. She's coming after me because of that stupid video." He slammed his hand on the desk. "Get my lawyers on the phone. Now. I want this shut down today." But it wasn't that simple. The IFPB was an independent agency. They didn't answer to politicians or businessmen. They answered to the law. Richard's lawyers made calls. They sent letters. They threatened lawsuits. Nothing worked. The investigation continued. Richard decided to try a different approach. If he couldn't stop the investigation through lawyers, maybe he could stop it through the investigator. He sent Amara an invitation to meet privately at his office. To clear up any misunderstandings, the message said. Amara showed the email to Marcus. "What do you think?" "I think it's a trap. He's going to try to intimidate you, or bribe you, or both." "Probably. So you're not going?" Amara smiled. "Oh, I'm definitely going. But I'm bringing something with me." She tapped her phone. Every word he says is going to be recorded. The meeting happened on a Friday afternoon. Richard's office was on the top floor of a building he owned. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Art on the walls that cost more than most people's houses. Everything designed to make visitors feel small. Amara walked in like she belonged there. Richard stood behind his desk, not bothering to come around and greet her. He gestured to a chair. "Sit." "I'll stand." He raised an eyebrow. "Suit yourself." He poured himself a drink from a crystal bottle. Didn't offer her one. "You know why I asked you here. I assume it's about the audit. It's about you using your position for personal revenge." His voice was smooth, almost friendly, but his eyes were cold. "I know you're still upset about what happened at the summit. I get it. But this, going after my company, that's crossing a line." Amara didn't blink. "Mr. Hale, the audit was assigned to my department by standard rotation. Your company was already on the list before the summit even happened. This has nothing to do with anything personal. Don't insult my intelligence." He set his glass down hard. "You think I don't know how these things work? You're trying to embarrass me, destroy what I've built, all because of a handshake. If your company has nothing to hide, then the audit will prove that. My company has nothing to hide." He stepped closer. "But I know how people like you operate. You'll twist things, find problems where there aren't any, make up stories to fit your narrative. People like me?" He paused, just for a second, but that second said everything. Amara kept her voice calm. "Mr. Hale, I'm going to be very clear with you. This investigation will proceed according to the law. If we find evidence of wrongdoing, we will act on it. If we don't, you have nothing to worry about. I have nothing to worry about either way." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I have friends in places you can't even imagine. This investigation will be shut down within a month. And when it is, I'll make sure everyone knows that you abuse your power for personal reasons." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." Amara nodded slowly. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Hale. This conversation has been very informative." She turned and walked out. In her pocket, her phone had recorded every single word. Back at the office, Amara played the recording for her supervisor, Director Williams. He listened with his hands folded on the desk. When it finished, he let out a long breath. "He threatened you?" "Yes. And he implied he would use political connections to shut down a legal investigation." "Yes." "This man has no idea how much trouble he's in." Director Williams shook his head. "Amara, your evidence is solid. The financial irregularities are clear. And now we have this. Attempted intimidation of a federal investigator. What's our next move?" "We accelerate. I want everything ready for the board by next week. If this is as bad as it looks, we're going to recommend a full asset freeze." Amara felt her heart beat faster. "A freeze? On how much? Based on what you found?" "At least $3 billion. $3 billion. Frozen. Just like that." She thought about Richard Hale's smug face, his threats, his certainty that he was untouchable. He was about to learn a very expensive lesson. The next 7 days were chaos. Amara's team worked around the clock. They organized evidence, wrote reports, triple-checked every detail. The case against Hale Industries was massive. Over $400 million in suspicious transfers. Shell companies on 3 different continents. Fake invoices. Hidden accounts. Evidence of bribing foreign officials. And at the center of it all, Richard Hale's signature. His approval. His knowledge. This wasn't some rogue employee making bad decisions. This came from the top. The day of the board meeting arrived. Amara presented her findings to the 12 members of the IFBB Oversight Board. She spoke for 2 hours. She answered questions for another 3. When she finished, the room was silent. Finally, the board chairman spoke. "Ms. Johnson, based on the evidence presented, this board is prepared to issue an emergency asset freeze on Hale Industries pending full investigation. Do you have any concerns about moving forward?" Amara thought about everything. The handshake, the threats, the years of people telling her she didn't belong. Then she thought about what her mother always said. "Let your work speak so loud, They can't ignore you. No concern, sir. The evidence speaks for itself. The chairman nodded. Then we proceed. The announcement went public at 9 o'clock the next morning. The International Financial Protection Bureau has issued an emergency freeze on $3 billion in assets belonging to Hale Industries. The company is under investigation for suspected money laundering, tax evasion, and bribery of foreign officials. No criminal charges have been filed at this time, but the investigation is ongoing. The news hit like a bomb. Within an hour, Hale Industries stock dropped 40%. Investors panicked. Phone lines at the company headquarters crashed from all the calls. And the handshake video? It came back with a vengeance. Media outlets played it on loop. The woman he disrespected is the same one who just froze his billions, reporters said. Talk about karma. Social media exploded. Amara's name was trending worldwide, but she wasn't watching any of it. She was at her desk, working on the next phase of the investigation. The freeze was just the beginning. Richard Hale's world fell apart fast. His board of directors called an emergency meeting. Shareholders demanded answers. His own executives started distancing themselves from him. The man who thought he was untouchable couldn't touch anything now. His money was frozen. His reputation was destroyed. His empire was crumbling, and there was nothing he could do about it. He tried fighting back. He went on television and called the investigation a witch hunt. He blamed Amara directly. He said she was using her position for revenge because of what happened at the summit. This is what happens when you give power to people who can't handle it. He said during an interview, she's emotional. She's biased. She shouldn't be anywhere near this case. It backfired immediately. People saw right through him. His excuses only made him look worse. Comments flooded in. He's really blaming her for his own crimes? This man just keeps digging himself deeper. She did her job. He broke the law. Simple. Even his own lawyers told him to stop talking. 3 weeks after the asset freeze, Richard Hale was a broken man. His stock had lost 60% of its value. 3 major investors pulled out completely. 2 of his board members resigned. His face was everywhere, and not in a good way. The same newspapers that once called him a genius now called him a criminal. He sat in his office alone, staring at the city lights below. His phone wouldn't stop ringing, but he didn't answer. What was the point? Every call was bad news. His assistant knocked on the door. "Sir, your lawyers are here." Richard didn't move. "Send them in." 4 attorneys walked in looking like they were about to deliver a death sentence. The lead lawyer, a man named Patterson who charged $2,000 an hour, cleared his throat. "Richard, we need to talk about your options." "What options?" "My money is frozen. My company is falling apart. My own board wants me gone." "That's exactly what we need to discuss." Patterson sat down across from him. "The investigation has found enough evidence to recommend criminal charges. If this goes to trial, you're looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison." Richard's face went pale. "Prison? Me?" "The evidence is overwhelming. The offshore accounts, the shell companies, the bribes, and that recording of you threatening the lead investigator, that alone could add obstruction charges. This is insane. I built this company from nothing. I created thousands of jobs. I donated millions to charity. And now they want to send me to prison because of some paperwork mistakes. These aren't paperwork mistakes, Richard. This is organized financial fraud over more than a decade. The paper trail is clear, and it leads directly to you." The room went quiet. Patterson continued. "You have one option that could help reduce your exposure." "What?" "Cooperate. Step down as CEO. Issue a public apology. Work with the investigation instead of against it. If you do that, we might be able to negotiate a deal. Heavy fines, loss of some assets, but possibly no prison time." Richard stared at him. "You want me to apologize?" To her, "I want you to avoid spending the rest of your life behind bars. That woman didn't do this to you. Richard, you did this to yourself. She just found the evidence." The next 48 hours were brutal. Richard met with his board. They gave him a choice: step down voluntarily or be removed by force. Either way, he was done. His shareholders sent a letter demanding change. Major partners began cutting ties. Even his own children started asking questions he couldn't answer. For the first time in his life, Richard Hale was powerless. He sat with Patterson again. If I do this, if I step down and apologize, will they unfreeze my assets? Eventually, once the investigation concludes and penalties are assessed. But, Richard, you need to understand something. This isn't going away. You're going to face consequences. The only question is how severe. Richard closed his eyes. He thought about everything he had built. The empire, the reputation, the legacy, all of it destroyed. And for what? Because he thought he was too smart to get caught. Because he believed the rules didn't apply to him. Because he looked at a young black woman and decided she was nothing. He had been wrong about all of it. The press conference happened on a Wednesday afternoon. Every major news network was there. Cameras filled the room. Reporters crowded the front rows. Richard Hale walked the podium looking like he had aged 10 years in a month. His suit was perfect, but his eyes were empty. He read from a prepared statement. I want to address the ongoing investigation into my company. After consultation with my legal team and board of directors, I have decided to step down as CEO of Hale Industries effective immediately. Reporters started shouting questions. He held up a hand. I also want to address my behavior at the Global Finance Summit several weeks ago. My treatment of Ms. Amara Johnson was disrespectful and wrong. I offer her my sincere apology. He paused. The words tasted like poison in his mouth. I allowed my personal biases to affect how I treated another human being. That is not acceptable. I am committed to learning and growing from this experience. More questions exploded from the crowd. Richard ignored them and walked away from the podium. Nobody believed the apology was real. Everyone knew it was forced, but it didn't matter. The words were out there, recorded forever. The man who refused to shake her hand had been brought to his knees. Amara watched the press conference from her office. Marcus stood beside her. He looks terrible. He should. How do you feel? She thought about it for a moment. I feel nothing. Not happy. Not satisfied. Not proud. Just done. That's it? He destroyed himself, and you feel nothing? He didn't destroy himself because of me. He destroyed himself because of what he did. I just found the proof. She turned off the screen. Come on. We have work to finish. Over the following months, the investigation concluded. Hale Industries paid $1.2 billion in fines. Richard Hale personally paid another $300 million. Several executives faced criminal charges. The company restructured completely. Richard avoided prison, but just barely. The deal required him to testify against his own former partners. He became a witness for the government, trading information for freedom. His reputation was gone. His fortune was cut in half. His legacy was the billionaire who got caught. He would never recover. And Amara? She went back to work. No celebration. No victory tour. No book deals or movie offers. She just did her job. Same as always, Director Williams called her into his office one morning. Amara, I want you to know that your work on this case has been noticed at the highest levels. You've been recommended for a promotion. Thank you, sir. You deserve it. What you did, the professionalism, the patience, the attention to detail. You could have made this personal. You could have let anger drive your decisions. But you didn't. You let the evidence speak. Amara nodded. That's the only way to do it right. A lot of people wouldn't see it that way. Then a lot of people would be wrong. William smiled. You remind me why I got into this work in the first place. Keep being exactly who you are. Amara, the world needs more people like you. Amara called her mother that night. I saw the news, her mother said. That man finally got what was coming to him. It's over, Mama. How do you feel, baby? Tired, but good. I did what I was supposed to do. You did more than that. You showed everyone that it doesn't matter how much money someone has. The truth catches up eventually. Amara smiled. You used to tell me that when I was little. Let your work speak so loud they can't ignore you. And look at you now. They couldn't ignore you, could they? No, Mama, they couldn't. A few months later, Amara was invited to speak at a conference for young professionals. She stood on stage in front of 500 people. Most of them were young. Many were black. Many were women. All of them were looking at her, like she was proof that things could change. She spoke for 20 minutes about her career, about the challenges she faced, about the moments when people tried to make her feel small. Then she said something that stayed with everyone in that room. There will be people who look at you and decide you don't belong. They'll refuse to shake your hand. They'll talk over you. They'll try to make you invisible. But here's what I learned. Their opinion of you is not your reality. Your work is your reality. Your integrity is your reality. Your truth is your reality. She paused. You don't need their approval. You don't need their respect. You just need to do your job so well that they can't pretend you don't exist. That's not revenge. That's power. Real power. The kind that doesn't need to be loud because it's already proven. The room erupted in applause. Richard Hale never recovered his position. He faded from public life. His name now a warning instead of a brand. And Amara? She kept working. She kept catching people who thought they were above the law. She kept proving that competence beats arrogance every single time. She never mentioned Richard Hale in interviews. She never gloated. She never used his downfall to build herself up. She didn't need to. Her work spoke loud enough. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button right now. We tell stories about people who face impossible odds and came out on top. Stories about justice. Stories about strength. Stories about what happens when the underdog refuses to stay down. Subscribe, drop a comment, and share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Until next time,